Stranger, danger. I mean, we've all heard this line so many times before in our life. Don't talk to strangers, don't look at strangers, don't take candy from strangers. I was never very good at listening to that last one. But the point is, strangers and the concept of fearing the people we don't know has been so ingrained into our minds now. In fact, we've become strangers to the concept of a stranger. But I'm here to throw a wrench in that ideal and say we should actually embrace strangers, because as our society grows more and more individualistic, I think it's time we finally embrace the people around us. But let me give you some context. A few weeks ago, I came across a really alarming statistic that over 70% of people feel chronically alone over long periods of time. And as I did more and more research, I realized that it was because of a lack of social interaction. I mean, we are physically next to so many people, but our minds are miles apart. And that's the problem. So why aren't we interacting with the people around us, even though it is so incredibly important? Harvard has been conducting a study over the past 80 years, and they came to a pretty amazing conclusion. The number one determiner of happiness wasn't wealth, happiness, or even societal or financial help. It was simply talking to strangers and having personal connections with the people around you. But here's where it got extra interesting. Those personal connections weren't just about romantic relationships or lifelong friendships, but it was the people you encountered every single day and the impact that those interactions had on you. But don't just take my word or Harvard's word for it. Science backs us up here as well. Every time you talk to a stranger and you have a positive social interaction, you experience a release of dopamine and oxytocin. Those are your feel-good hormones and those chemicals that make you feel like you belong in a community. And every time you interact with people you don't know, you get a rush of this feel-good feeling. So it's been established that when we talk to people, we feel good. When we feel good, that makes us happy long-term, and that makes us feel like we are part of a larger community. So why don't we do it? Hate to break it to you, but that's not the only way we get this dopamine rush. You guessed it. Your phones do the exact same thing, and that's the problem. The University of Chicago explains this exceptionally well. It's a phenomenon called the dopamine divide. Every time we get a hit of dopamine, it comes from various different places. One of the most prominent ways is, in fact, your phone. But here's why it's a problem. The study goes on to explain that when we get that initial hit of dopamine, it's not lasting. It sends us on that initial high, but then we come crashing. But why is that a problem? Because it leaves us craving more. Every time we get a dopamine hit from our phones, we go back. We continue scrolling and looking for more. But here's where social interaction differs. When we talk to people around us and we interact with the people sitting right next to us, we receive a dopamine hit that lasts. It lasts far longer, leaving us satisfied. And that's the most important thing today. But let's take this one step further, because I have some pretty good news for all of you. The burden to connect isn't just on you, it's on other people too. But here's the important part. Even if you are not the one doing the connecting, you still have to be open to connection. It's a phenomenon that UCLA describes as barriers to connection. So even if you are not the one actively seeking, you still have to make sure that you are welcoming to everyone else. Now, raise your hand in this room if as you're walking the hallways, you walk with your headphones in. Okay, all of you are lying. I should see all your hands up. That's the problem. That is a barrier to connection. Now, raise your hand if, as you're sitting in the cafeteria, you're on your phone at times. Okay, that's a little bit more honest. I'm very happy. But these are all called barriers to connection. Even if someone wants to approach you, they can't do it, because those are two successful barriers that you have not removed. So even if you seek connection and the other person seeks your connection, you can't do it because of those barriers to connection. So I encourage you, remove those barriers and be comfortable with uncomfortable silence. That's the biggest mindset shift that we can have as a society. But let's take this one step further and understand why we don't like talking to people we don't know. I've learned that humans are not very rational beings. In fact, there are two things that are pretty universal between all of us. The first one is that we hate rejection, we despise it because we have no control. And the second one is that we don't like interacting with things or people that we cannot guarantee the outcome of. And these two things in combination is not a great idea. But here's the thing. When we interact with people, it is an active act of courage. You are telling them, hey, I am being vulnerable, I am putting my heart out there, regardless of whether it's a stranger or not. And that's a really brave thing to do. But you do this for your long-term effects too. Because every time you talk to a stranger and you take this act of courage, you also increase your risk tolerance. Every time someone doesn't perceive the way you intended it to be perceived, that helps you long-term because you now know how to address that situation. More importantly, when you are making decisions long-term, you are now able to accept rejection and failure, and that's really, really incremental. So if you're not willing to do it for the health benefits of feeling like a part of a larger society, do it for the long term, because you know that taking a risk will reap its benefits. But let's understand why this is so important today. As our society becomes increasingly more polarizing, we see that the physical differences divide us, that we don't talk to people who don't think like us, act like us, or believe like us. But here's where talking to strangers changes everything. Every time you talk to a stranger, you discover the invisible strings that connect all of us. And when you discover the invisible strings that connect us, you discover a powerful weapon, and that's empathy. Because every time you see someone's story and you hear them for who they are, you're able to be empathetic for situations and people you never knew existed. And that's such an amazing feeling. So as we leave here today, I encourage you to do a few things. Today or tomorrow or even right now, talk to a stranger. Approach someone that you've never approached before, not because you have to, not because you want to be polite, but simply because you don't know where it might lead. Know someone's name, acknowledge their presence, because you don't know the impact that it's going to have on them. And as you leave here today, I encourage you, ask the people around you, what's your name? Because that connection is one that's truly going to last a lifetime to create a more empathetic world for all of us. Thank you.